Spent a few days in Austin catching up with friends. Since I live in Louisiana, I had to drive all day to get back from this trip. On my last day in Austin, Tom, a friend from high school, commented on my Instagram story out of the blue. He asked when I was leaving Austin. I told him today, and he said his house was an hour away, which coincidentally was on my way back. He suggested I stop by, and I agreed. The GPS said it was about an hour and a half to get to Tom's house. Tom is an old friend from high school. We lost touch after graduation and only followed each other on social media without speaking for years. When I got there, the first thing I noticed was that his house looked old, not run down but old and nostalgic. The wooden porch creaked as I walked up, and when he opened the door, I smelled the smell of old wood mixed with a rustic, woodsy feel. Tom was as warm as ever, holding me tight and showing the sincerity of a deep friendship, not faded by time. Inside, the house was as classic as the outside. The furniture seemed to belong to the 70s, and every step on the wooden floor made an interesting clattering sound. It felt a bit like stepping into Texas of a bygone era, carrying with it a nostalgic charm. We sat down in the living room, recounting our lives and drinking a few glasses of whiskey as the afternoon just hit 5 o'clock. The whiskey made our conversation flow more smoothly and also quickly made me drunk. One glass led to 2, then 3, and before I knew it, the warmth of the alcohol made the space smaller, but also more intimate and heavy at the same time. Time passed like the wind. We had a very special time to chat after so many years apart. Finally, Tom asked the question I had been waiting for. "You have a long drive home. Why don't you stay here for the night?" He suggested I stay. I hesitated but knew he was right. I wasn't in the mood to drive, so I nodded. When I asked if I could sleep on the couch we were sitting on, he said he had a spare room. The room wasn't anything special, but it was more comfortable than the couch. After eating the Chinese food we brought earlier, Tom led me down a short hallway to the spare bedroom. I didn't pay much attention to the room because the alcohol had set in. The air in the room felt like it had barely been used. I quickly collapsed onto the bed, completely exhausted and drunk. In the middle of the night, I woke up with dry lips and a dizzy head. A little moonlight filtered through the curtains into the dark room. At that moment, my eyes stopped in the corner of the room. On the closet door, something hung loosely. At first, it looked like a long black coat hanging on a hanger. But as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I realized that its shape was not right at all. The top part seemed wide like a human shoulder, and the way it hung gave the impression of a human silhouette rather than ordinary fabric. My heart pounded. I didn't remember seeing it when I entered the room before, but maybe I was drunk and missed it, or I didn't pay attention. I tried to turn around, ignoring the strange presence and telling myself that it was probably nothing, but my mind kept going back to it, forcing me to look again. It was still there. I turned to the corner of the room, my stomach tightening as I realized the coat was gone. Sitting up in panic left my head spinning and my body numb, an unpleasant mix of fear and the hangover from the night before. My heart was pounding like it was going to break my ribcage as I looked around the empty room. The only thing standing in the corner was the empty closet door. I threw off the covers and rushed to Tom's room. He was still sleeping soundly and snoring, completely unaware of the panic that was gripping me. I shook him awake, taking a long time because he was so drunk. Eventually, Tom woke up. He rubbed his eyes in a daze as I spoke in a rushed voice about the long black coat I'd seen on the coat rack in the living room. Tom looked at me in confusion, asking, "What coat?" I immediately described it as looking like the silhouette of a stranger by the closet door. Tom, now more sober, replied that he didn't own any long coats and that there wasn't even a coat rack in the living room. His serious expression made me stare, trying to find some sign that this might be a joke. But Tom's expression didn't change. Finally, he sighed and followed me to check the spare bedroom again. I pointed to the corner where I had seen it and said it was right there. Tom scratched his head, wondering if I was dreaming, but I was sure I woke up and it was there. Then, I woke up again and it was gone. My voice trembled slightly as I told the story. We stood in the room for a long time, feeling the eerie silence that hung over us. Tom nodded in agreement that we should check the whole house just to be sure. We searched every room, every closet, every corner, but found nothing unusual. There was no sign of forced entry, no strange coat, and no explanation for what had just happened. Tom tried to comfort me, suggesting that maybe I was just half asleep and seeing things that weren't there. I really wanted to believe that because I didn't want to think about the other scary possibility that someone had been in the house and watched me sleep, only to disappear quietly when the sun came up. As soon as the sun was high in the sky, I packed up, said goodbye to Tom, and left. All the way back to Louisiana, the memory of that strange coat-like figure kept playing in my mind. The image haunted me. The way it had stood motionless in the corner of the room before disappearing the next morning. Maybe Tom had been playing a prank on me, but if so, he hadn't admitted anything to me to this day that would make me doubt it. Or maybe someone was actually in the house watching me sleep and then decided to leave early in the morning. This happened when I was 18, on a trip with my parents and a close friend we'll call Anna. The story takes place in Sweden on a road trip. We drove 8 hours from home to an amusement park and planned to camp. However, we hadn't booked a place in advance. When we got to the city where the park was located, the plan was to visit the next day. So we needed to find a place to stay for the night. My dad searched online for a nearby campsite and called one that looked like it would be a good fit. Unfortunately, it was the day of a major soccer tournament, so the campsite was fully booked. The area was surrounded by dense forests, and the beach was only a 10-minute walk away. We had originally planned to set up camp right on the beach, but something told me that camping in the parking lot would be safer. As my family got out of the car to set up camp for the night, I noticed an old car parked far away in the corner of the lot, seemingly abandoned with no one in sight. It was a bit strange since it was already dark, and at this hour hardly anyone would be at the beach or wandering around in the woods. However, I didn't think too much of it and helped my parents set up the tent. My parents stayed in one tent while Anna and I shared the other. Both tents were placed close together, and after a while we managed to get the job done. Anna and I's tents were quite cozy. We lay down to watch YouTube and enjoy snacks while enjoying the quiet atmosphere. At around 11 p.m., we both decided to go to bed early so we wouldn't be too tired the next morning. However, it wasn't until midnight while we were scrolling through TikTok in the tent that a strange sound suddenly came from the parking lot, like the sound of metal hitting gravel. The sharp sound startled us, although we were very curious. We didn't dare look outside the tent and just listened quietly. The sound continued. This time it sounded like a shovel being thrown into the trunk, followed by the sound of the trunk slamming shut. My heart was pounding and my lips trembled slightly with anxiety. After a few tense minutes, we heard the sound of a car starting up quickly, as if someone was trying to get away from this place as quickly as possible. A feeling of unease filled my heart. I hurriedly texted a friend who lived in a nearby city to let her know where I was, and the reply sent a chill down my spine. The area around the beach was notoriously dangerous, a hotbed of organized crime. I had never known this before, and as I read the replies, my heart felt like it was being squeezed. About 10 minutes after the car left, the silence returned. Anna and I felt a little calmer when we were suddenly awakened by a terrifying scream coming from deep within the forest. The scream echoed so loudly that we both froze in fear. I immediately texted my mother to tell her about the scream I had just heard. When I got no response, I decided to call her directly to wake her up. She finally answered the phone and tried to comfort me that things might not be as serious as I thought. However, at that moment, I could not imagine any rational reason for someone to scream so terrifyingly in the middle of this wild forest. Anna and I crawled under the covers, trembling, not daring to sleep. The night dragged on in suffocating tension. Suddenly, everything fell into an eerie silence. Just as I began to feel a little relieved, my heart stopped. Someone's footsteps were circling near our tent, moving slowly and cautiously. Anna and I were completely frozen in extreme fear. My phone was immediately turned face down so that the light from the screen would not reflect outside. The footsteps became clearer and clearer, first around our tent, then towards my parents' tent, and then around to the car parked nearby. I remember the event as if it had happened yesterday, even though I was only 6 years old. That night, Anna and I were still reeling from the mysterious accident on the trail through the woods. I had seen a car speeding away, and shortly after a police car was chasing us in the same direction. We had closed the car doors and sat shivering inside to feel safer. I stayed up most of the night until about 5 a.m., keeping an eye out while Anna finally fell asleep next to me. Exhausted, we went back to the tent and slept until about 9 a.m. and when I woke up, I told my mother what had happened the night before. She said she had also heard footsteps around the tent and even heavy breathing, just like in a horror movie. It scared her, but my father had no idea because he had slept soundly all night. After telling my father the story without hesitation, the whole family hurriedly packed up, eager to leave the place as soon as possible. None of us wanted to stay in this creepy forest for even a minute longer. Strangely enough, what happened the night before didn't affect our fun at the amusement park later that day. But that night, my curiosity urged me to investigate the area of the forest where we had camped. The result sent a chill down my spine. Not long before we arrived, a man had been murdered there, a case involving debt and gangs. Even more terrifying was that 2 men had mysteriously disappeared from the beach right next to that area and were never found. Unable to stop thinking about the creepy possibilities, I wondered if the person lurking around our tent was someone dangerous, checking for witnesses. Maybe we had faced danger without even knowing it. Even now, I still think about the screams that night and why someone would use a shovel in the middle of the night in the dark woods. And what made the police chase the car? I guess that mystery will never be solved. The story still haunts me when I think about it, even though I was too young to understand it at the time. 6 years old is when my childhood memories really started to sink in. I had a brother named Keith who was 2 years older than me. He was 8 and I was 6. We had a very strict rule. I had to go to bed at 8:30 every night. If we didn't, or if Dad caught us staying up past that time, we would get in trouble. Dad was very strict with us when we were little. One night, on a night I wasn't sure if it was a school day, Keith woke me up when everything was quiet. We shared a large bedroom on the 2nd floor while my parents' room was on the 1st floor. I didn't understand why Keith woke me until he whispered to be quiet and listen. Listening closely, I realized that someone was calling our names from downstairs. It was a voice that sounded like Mom. Thinking it was real, I tried to get up to answer, but Keith pulled me back, saying that I didn't think it was Mom. I snapped, thinking that my brother was trying to scare me, but he insisted that I come closer so I could hear better. As I moved closer to the bedroom door and listened, the sound became clearer, a very quiet voice calling our names. Keith? Mikey? I tried to protest that it was definitely Mom calling, but Keith refused to believe it. I felt brave enough to open the bedroom door and listen through the crack in the stairs, but the strange voice had stopped. I whispered to Keith that Mom had left, but he insisted that it wasn't Mom. I told him to be quiet and stop scaring me. Carefully unlocking the stairwell door, I gently pulled it open so it wouldn't make a sound. When the crack was just wide enough, from the foot of the stairs I could clearly see the figure of a woman. But I knew for sure that she wasn't our mom. Whoever she was, her eyes met mine and she said, "Hey honey, come down here." A chill ran down my spine and I quickly closed the door, locked it, and went back to my bedroom, locking the door as well. I started to cry, and Keith kept telling me that he had warned me. We decided to do everything we could to alert our parents. At 3 a.m. on time, we stomped our feet on the floor and screamed as loud as we could. Not long after, my parents ran upstairs and banged on the door to get in. At first, my father was furious because the door was locked, but when he entered and saw me sobbing, they knew something was wrong. We told them everything. My mother seemed particularly worried, insisting that she had not been downstairs or calling our name. When she asked what the woman looked like, we could only shake our heads because we could not see clearly. Meanwhile, my father rushed downstairs to check the surroundings. After some time had passed and everything seemed safer, my mother comforted us and kissed us goodnight, reminding us once more to lock the door. Something in my parents' eyes made me suspect that they knew who the mysterious woman was. However, no one said anything more. Later, I understood that they probably kept it a secret to protect my siblings and I psychologically. Many years later, as adults, I mentioned this to my parents at a dinner. However, they just shrugged and said it was probably a random intruder. But what was strange and they couldn't explain was how the woman knew our names. That haunting story happened when I was 16 years old and still in high school. At that time, I didn't have my own car, so I usually asked my parents to pick me up or walked if the distance was short. It was a weekend, and my friend Haley invited the whole group to her house because her parents were out. My mom drove me there and told me to walk or have someone drive me home if she was late. At Haley's house, we, a group of 5 girls, were happily chatting when suddenly a few boys from school showed up unannounced. This made me uncomfortable because one of them was someone I didn't want to see because of past troubles. Haley didn't tell me about the invitation. In fact, she thought that putting us in this situation would help solve things. It was really confusing. When I couldn't stand the awkward atmosphere anymore, I decided to leave even though it was late. On the way home, I texted Haley to express my anger. She kept apologizing and telling me to come back, but I just wanted to go home right then. After walking for about 5 minutes, my heart suddenly slowed down when I heard footsteps behind me. At first I thought I was imagining it, but when I stopped to make sure, the footsteps stopped as well. I turned around and saw a middle-aged man wearing a hoodie, with the hood covering most of his face. His hands were in his pockets. He had an unreadable smile on his face and slowly said, I said hello and turned around, continuing my walk. We were in the suburbs. People were walking around as usual, even though it was late. I walked for a few more minutes, and every time I glanced around, I saw the man behind me keeping the same distance, even seeming to be a little closer. My way home wasn't straight and involved many turns, but every time I turned, he was still following closely. Feeling uneasy, I texted my friends about the situation. The man suddenly spoke up. It's a beautiful night, isn't it? I like the weather. I answered vaguely yes and walked a little faster, trying not to show my nervousness. But he continued to strike up a conversation, and each time he spoke, I felt more and more uneasy. He asked, "Are you the neighbor?" I answered briefly and firmly, "No." The man chuckled, making me even more uncomfortable. I texted all my friends for help, hoping someone would come pick me up. Ironically, the person who came to pick me up was Brandon, the friend I wanted to avoid. I'll call him that for now. Things got even scarier when the man behind me suddenly said, "I'm not going to hurt you. You live near the elementary school, right?" I turned to face him, and he was still smiling, but this time it looked fake and much scarier. I yelled, "Leave me alone," and started running. Behind me, he rushed after me, making me realize that my life was in danger. I yelled for help, hoping to get the attention of the people around me. The screaming clearly scared him. He roared, "Shut up, kid," but still had to run away in the dark when he noticed the lights in the nearby houses starting to turn on. A couple came out of their house to calm me down and waited for Brandon to come. Brandon got me home safely in a minute's drive. When I got there, I found my mom wasn't home and hadn't responded to my texts. Not wanting to be alone, I invited Brandon to stay the night. He happily agreed, seemingly excited to help, but that wasn't the end of it. As we sat there catching up, we heard footsteps outside the house. My room was on the second floor, facing the backyard. We could clearly hear the backyard gate opening, which was strange since my mom never used that entrance. I fought back my fear and decided to watch from the window instead of yelling for my mom. But it was completely silent outside. Suddenly we heard a man's voice boom out, "I saw you up there." We both panicked. Brandon yelled something like, "We're calling the police." And we did. The thought of this stranger knowing where I lived made me shudder. If he knew where I had been, what guarantee was there that he wouldn't come back? Brandon had actually tried to keep his cool during the 911 call. I was grateful for that. The police showed up quickly, and their presence helped me feel a little safe. The vague description of the stranger made me feel relieved that at least something was being done. My mother came home not long after, looking just as scared as I was. The police kept a patrol car parked outside all night to keep everyone calm.